And we are back. Thank you so much for joining everyone again. My name is Jason Levine, Principal Evangelist for Adobe, and we are so glad to have you here on the stream on Adobe Live, Behance, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, talking today to two amazing women who created the title sequence for the recent Hollywood film Birds of Prey. I want to point out, of course, that because we are across all of these different networks, we have Adobe people in the chats. These are meant to be live interactive sessions. We're not just giving you demos and presentations. We want you to interact with the guests. They want to hear your questions. We're talking about amazing creators who inspire me and millions of us around the world every single day. So be vocal. Now, the main chat is happening over at Adobe Live. So if you're not there already, you can use your Adobe ID to sign into behance.net/Adobe Live. We also have a lot of Adobe peeps at the Premiere Pro Facebook chat. So that's facebook.com/Premiere Pro. And I will be monitoring Twitter, Periscope, and the other networks as well. Okay, so without further ado, our guests, Penelope Niederlander and Amanda Gotera, are joining us. They work for Shine. They are amazing ladies. Thank you so much for joining us today on the live stream. How are you both?
Good.
Doing just fantastic.
We're excited to be here.
That was a very frantic, excitable intro. I'm sorry. It's like I suddenly just felt my coffee caffeine thing kick in.
Oh, no, it's fine.
So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. We've got about 30 or so minutes to do it. And I wanted to just first start. I know we even had questions. I was getting questions on Twitter sort of promoting this event in advance because, you know, we did a blog post and had your lovely faces up there talking about what we were going to be chatting about. Kind of your origin stories, or if we've got any, I just forgot the cartoon. Teen Titans Go. My kids love Teen Titans. I actually am more partial to Teen Titans Go. Beast Boy often refers to, there's an episode called The Origins story. So I was curious if you could first maybe start with you, Penny. Tell us your origin story, how you got into illustration. Did you study illustration or design? Because when people see the content here, they're going to be pretty freaked out, and I know they're going to want to know, like, how did you develop this kind of a style?
Oh wow! Well, I grew up in the with the parenting of here's a pad of paper and a pen at the at the restaurant. Now draw. Okay, so like I've just been sketching my whole life, and then in high school, I got a copy of Premiere and Photoshop, and I was playing around on my Mac back then, learning. And when I went to college, I went to school for motion graphics and graduated in 2002. And I'm coming up on 18 years doing motion graphics. And it's taken me this long to actually start incorporating, I think, drawings into actual paid work. And so that's my, I don't know how to say it, origin
Story, yes.
Yeah.
I love it. And how about you, Amanda?
Well, I come from a pretty different background. I didn't get involved in film and animation until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I studied anthropology and sea turtles in college, and was a children's librarian briefly, and then decided I wanted to make content instead of curate it, and ended up in film school. Got an MFA, and I've always cared about storytelling. Everything I've been interested in the past has been connected with this thread of wanting to tell stories in an interesting and visual way. But when I left my MFA program, I started freelancing as a motion designer, an animator, and visual effects artist, and really loved it. And I met Penny when we were both working at the same studio in Austin, Texas. And we worked together for a couple years. I can't remember exactly how long, but we worked together for a while. And then when I moved out to Los Angeles, Penny wrangled this particular job, and we ended up on it at the same time.
Wow, that's awesome. And I love, it's so cool because we had quite a few guests this week who talked about their origins, and they weren't necessarily in the fields that they ultimately kind of developed and landed with their craft. So actually, as we're getting further into that, I thought we would go ahead and switch over to the title sequence in question. Now, for all of you watching, of course, you probably know this. There is commercial music on here. We have to silence that. So I was just made aware that Amanda is actually going to, sing the whole thing for us live. Is that right, Amanda?
Oh,
no,
yes.
Did I hear that correctly? Okay.
I love that idea.
Right. No, so in all seriousness. But here it is. And this is really something else. And I know that you've prepared a walkthrough, and we're going to kind of cut through various different portions of this, all directly done inside of After Effects. So you're going to reveal all the, I mean, just really the entire process of how you built this. But it's so stylized, and it has such a, a very unique and particular look. I have to imagine, after this got released, I mean, people must have just been really, especially in the industry, just going like, wow, kudos. This is like amazing stuff. Wanting to know more about how you did this, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think we should shout out Shine Studio.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Go for it, Penny.
Okay. Yeah. So we did this. We animated for a studio called Shine in Los Angeles. Principals Bob Swenson and Michael Riley. Yeah. So Michael Riley designed all the boards. He drew all these on his iPad, and I don't actually know. We didn't actually show any of the boards in our walkthrough, but know that they kind of look like this, but stills, And I'd been working with Shine for, golly, we were trying to figure it out, like 14 or so years on and off, working on title sequences and commercials and stuff. So I talked to Michael every once in a while, and we were talking about drawing and digital drawing, and he'd recently got into it. He got his new iPad Pro, and he was figuring it out. And I showed him some of the stuff that I was doing in that, and he's like, "Oh my God, I have this title sequence!" And so I was like, "Oh my God, I'll come out to LA for it." And then I was like, "Oh my God, I got to get Amanda to come and help us on this."
So cool! Oh, it's awesome. And just like the colors and everything. Now, let me ask you that, just regarding sort of the palettes and things. Were these predetermined in advance, or is this stuff that the two of you kind of got to sort of design on your own? Or, obviously it goes through lots of review, I imagine, countless amounts of review, but was the look and color palette sort of predetermined?
The initial look and color palette was really determined by Michael Riley's, by his storyboards. Yeah. And we were taking those still images and breaking them into world spaces and animating them.
Sweet. Well, how about if we cut to the actual video that you cut together of all the After Effects projects, and maybe you can kind of start walking us through this. And as I mentioned, I'll feed you questions as they come in, but we have so many Adobe people in all the various chats. They're really kind of tackling these one by one, but I'm sure there's going to be some very direct questions here. In fact, here, Matthew Chernitsky, coming to us from Adobe Live, is asking, before we even get into this, any advice for someone who's well-versed in still photography and retouching via Photoshop to get into video and motion art? Any advice there?
Well, since I know Matt, he's a photographer. He was a photographer for my Derby League here in Austin. He's awesome. He's a great photographer. And I mean, the nice thing about Adobe software is, especially that primary Premiere, After Effects, Photoshop, and Illustrator is there's a lot of overlap. Right. There's some legacy pieces of the software that shortcuts that are not across all because these softwares are older than Adobe, kind of, right? But I would say that there's some really great resources, whether you want to explore just what's free and out there on online tutorials. There's a lot of I can't think of anyone's names right now, but I'd imagine Andrew Kramer's website and we talked about him the other day too. And I was going to say, actually, to your point, that's the thing, and I say this a lot when we're sort of presenting these things. There's a lot of familiar tools and techniques across the app. So if you know even basic timeline animation in Photoshop, you already know how to do it in After Effects. And After Effects works natively with Photoshop and Illustrator files. If you know the develop module in Lightroom, for instance, well, the basic module inside of our Lumetri control panel in Premiere is the fundamentals of the develop module in Lightroom. So there's so much crossover. It's not going to be completely unfamiliar. There's always those little unique bits, but ultimately you can get your feet wet and kind of feel like you're somewhat at home. And of course, tools in general, things like, M for the move tool, standard keyboard shortcuts are pretty much fundamentally the same across all of the digital video and audio apps too.
And that kind of integration was actually really crucial to what we were doing on this sequence, because we needed something that looked hand-drawn and was made in 2D layers. And we could do, and Penny drew in Photoshop, I drew in Procreate, And we brought those layers into After Effects and had multiple versions of textures that multiple versions of each drawing that we would loop. And actually, if we start playing it through, we can talk you through that specific part of the process.
Yeah, definitely.
So what we've got here is a character we call Eye Hair, and she was a flat image of a woman with eyes in her hair, and we needed those eyes to blink in sequence. And we also needed it to feel hand-drawn and to feel alive and not feel static. Right. So a lot of what we did was modular. We were creating elements. So for instance, this asset of the blinking eye, and it had these different parts that we would bring in, and using pre-comps, we were nesting these elements together. And there were, we did 3, right, Penny? 3 drawings for each element and then looped through, which creates the like jittery alive feeling. And we, as you can see here, I had a whole bunch of different kinds of pupils and irises to make each eye feel different. But each one of those eyes in the head is actually the same eye. Using the mesh warp, we were able to make them all feel unique.
Nice. I love too, and I imagine it's stylistic, but is that something that you did in the illustration of it, where like it seems like there's bits that where you didn't fill, it's not completely filled in, right, which adds to that sort of organic kind of.
Oh yeah, that's intentional.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't know if that was like added after the fact via something, or that was you just like, oh yeah,
that was us with styluses. And if we drew it and it was too filled in, you need to go back and clean it out.
Right?
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Because you really feel that. I mean, that's the thing is, seeing it. There's no question. I mean, and it reminded me, I don't know if you'd remember, and this is, of course, a much more, there's more beauty to it, but going back some 20-some years ago, there was a cartoon, Dr. Katz. Do you remember this on Comedy Central?
Yeah.
And they used their technique, which was in the credits, was they called it squiggle vision.
I remember that.
Yeah,
yep.
Right. And that was kind of a precursor to this. That was actually, it kind of just looked like After Effects wiggle. It was just sort of, right. But it but same.
It's that living hold, you know what
exactly.
I mean? Like it came from like cartoons where you wanted to feel like someone actually touched every frame.
Yeah.
Very much the same process. We wanted to draw as little as possible.
Oh yeah.
Because there was so much to draw and there were just
two of us. So we had to find workarounds. And Penny, we can see your particles right now, actually.
Yeah.
Penny, do you want to talk about the thinking behind adding those particles into the spaces?
Well, I think like across the board. So we didn't, we also use Cinema 4D. I want to like throw that out and we can kind of touch on that a little bit later, but
we've got that in here too. Yeah.
We had a huge shout out to Mike Chapman, who was doing cell animation in Toon Boom on like the fire hair in one of the shots and some various things that was more than like 3 frame loops.
Yeah. Jason, if you go to 1530, you'll be able to see the cell animation.
There we go.
Sorry, Penny, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that. So, we had these elements we drew in Procreate and Photoshop. We had cell stuff done in Toon Boom. We have animation in After Effects and Cinema using those elements, those original elements.
Yeah.
But to make everything feel unified, we wanted to have like as many elements that were across all shots as possible. So, for instance, like it was just really important to unify the look. So, the particles were all like hand-drawn particles that I drew them all in Photoshop with the animation toolbar, and I didn't want anything to be kind of like out of the box. Like everything wanted to be created. So, yeah, now we're not on that part anymore. But this is his hair animation is so cool. He managed to make it look so fluid, but also sketchy like our other drawings.
Yeah.
Right.
If you skip to 1655, you can see the particles.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Here we go. It's coming.
Definitely check out MikeChapman.com though. MYKE Chapman. We met him at Rooster Teeth, and he was our cell animator there. And he specializes in like fluids and fires and all that cool stuff.
Oh, yeah. So, hey, actually, for either one of you, we've got Varun Raj asking a question. And this comes up all the time, especially for this kind of detailed work. What kind of system configurations were you both working on for this? I mean, are you using like Mac Pro Tower style, or is it laptop, or anything in particularly high end to do this, or what's your configuration?
Do you want me to tackle this?
Yeah, you go for it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So Shine is primarily a Mac house. They're rocking, MacBook Pros and the 2013
The trash can.
black. Yeah. You got it.
Right.
Mac Pros, right?
Not the cheese grater, the trash can. Right. Yes,
right. Well, they have a few cheese graters. I think they actually got rid of them.
It's just
while we were
industry
there.
terms, cheese grater, trash can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I drove out from Austin and I brought my computer and I'm running a PC just because I'm more familiar with it now.
Right.
I wouldn't say that this stuff was taxing on any kind of level. Like, I've got two 2080 Ti's in my computer and it didn't use those at all. Right.
Right.
You could definitely do these shots on a smaller laptop. You really just the consideration of fast storage, because some of these files are, 6K, 8K frames.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was actually another question I was just going to ask. John was asking what was the original source frame size of the illustrated media. So you just kind of answered that there.
Well, the drawings were done at just iPad Pro screen resolution, I believe. And then we recreated everything at whatever resolution we thought we would need. So if we needed to zoom in like the eyes, Amanda drew those larger than 4K screen res. Actually, I don't even remember the resolution. It was crazy.
Right.
Yeah, it might have been bigger.
Right.
It was like 2880 by I don't know. It was
oh yeah. Well, and I love too that you mentioned that it's a combination of Procreate and Photoshop and C4D and Illustrator. This is one of those things, and it sometimes gets a little. Well, not for us, but sometimes there's this weird sense of it's uncomfortable, like, oh, we're mentioning they're using someone else, but no, that is kind of the key, right? You use what works, and I think one of the really nice things about After Effects, Photoshop, Premiere is that you can integrate all of these things together ultimately. So it doesn't really matter. And look, do stuff where you feel comfortable. At some point, everybody probably touches Photoshop, probably touches Illustrator. So, it keeps you in the CC family, so to speak. But, I mean, did you have any headaches bringing Procreate stuff into here or anything like that? Or was it like, no, it just kind of worked, just did what you wanted it to do?
I think that transition was pretty straightforward. It was just a matter of communicating with the other artist in the room and making sure. I mean, I can't say enough for naming conventions. Being able to just export files. So we exported from Procreate. Because I was in Procreate, exported 2 PSDs and then brought the PSDs directly into After Effects and brought them in each layer. I brought them in with the layers separated out, which was crucial. And it was super. It was very straightforward. It felt pretty streamlined.
Yeah, Amanda was on Procreate on my iPad Pro, and I was on my Cintiq, and really there was no difference in assets. Both work as Photoshop files, and we kind of discussed how we wanted to save them so that they were easiest to use in After Effects and Cinema, and it just
pre-production
it worked out.
on your part. Yeah.
Super easy.
That's awesome. So that's funny. Someone was just asking about what type of tablet or stylus you use. So you just mentioned Cintiq. A couple questions. Joel was just asking now, have you used Animate to create any of this, or no Animate in here?
I don't know how to use Animate.
Okay. formerly known as Flash. A lot of questions. Sean Davis and several others are asking about how you leverage Cinema 4D. So I don't know if we want to cut to that section.
Yeah, let me give you the time code.
Yeah.
While she's pulling up the time code, I will say about Cinema that next Wednesday I am doing a whole demo of my Cinema workflow on this project with the Maxon virtual NAB.
Oh,
but
nice.
we do have some projects that I opened up here.
So 2450 is where you want to be.
Okay. Shuttling now. There we go. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So I used Cinema in this case very simple, low level stuff. Like if you look at this, the hammer is made out of, I want to say 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 cylinders. I did some little tweaks, you know, so that they're not just straight up cylinders. There's a little bit on the hammer, a little bit of a bowing of the side.
Right. Yeah.
But, you know, it's everything is a luminance texture. There's no shading. So everything comes out black or the color. When you play it in the interface, I have it set up so that it cycles, you know, 2 frames, 2 frames, 2 frames, and loops. So it plays the same way that After Effects will play it. You know, there's some little trickery with Espresso. So, for instance, on the handle, there's a little blue highlight and a little gray highlight on the top of and bottom of the handle. No matter how you turn the hammer, that always faces camera, so it feels like a highlight. The textures on this one are gigantic, right? Because I knew that I needed to like have it far away and zoom crazy in.
Super sweet here. So now let me ask you this, and this is more just a question because, you know, when we still many people aren't aware that we actually ship Cinema 4D Lite within After Effects, right? So if you're an After Effects CC user, you might be thinking right now, oh, damn, this is awesome. You could actually launch Cinema 4D directly from After Effects. Just go to File, New, and you'll see Maxon Cinema 4D project. It'll open you up in C4D Lite, and then of course you can upgrade to the full version here. But
you can absolutely do what I did here in Cinema Lite.
Oh, nice. That was good. That someone just asked that. And then the other part of it is when you do that from After Effects, you create not a dynamic link, but it's what we called our true 3D pipeline with the Cineware plugin, which will then live in After Effects. So effectively, you can make changes on the Cinema 4D side, click back over to After Effects, and you see them represented there. Did you do anything like, was there any kind of back and forth? Like, were you doing stuff in C4D and then sort of viewing it in After Effects, or were you kind of doing renders back and forth just to make it easier? Or was there any integration like that, or was it more render based?
You know, in this case, I did not use that dynamic link. I didn't need to. It plays back maybe half speed in Cinema directly.
Right.
So I could get, you know, in some cases it was even faster.
Sure.
I could really see my shot, and then like I would do a little test render, and it, you know, because it was luminance, there was no shading, no ambient occlusion, nothing crazy. The render was like frame. So I could really just knock out frames really quickly.
Yeah.
I will also plug that I did a demo in 2018 for Maxon at NAB where I do use that live link quite a lot when I did the titles for another show.
Oh, yes.
So if you want to go back and see mine from 2 years ago, I covered that.
That's awesome. Yes. No, I mean, I remember when we introduced it and we actually had Maxon. Actually, Maxon. I was presenting with Maxon at both NAB and IBC, showing that direct link. And Michelle Galina, who's in the Adobe live chat, will remember us doing this. And it just sort of blew people's minds. And again, looking at this, and by the way, you're getting a lot of awesome comments. Asha Yunus says it gives that lithography effect. I love the style. I remember we were doing stuff with like super heavy photorealistic 3D objects. So there, you know, you're already putting a bit more stress. I love how you kind of mentioned that because of the nature of how these things are done and like basic cylinders and things, it was actually pretty quick. You know, like even if you were using the Cineware side in After Effects, it again on even a laptop, it still would have been pretty achievable based on the style of kind of what you were working with. And it looks so awesome.
And since we're looking at it, I want to say that Penny knocked out this crossbow so quickly. It was insane.
It's awesome.
It was about 2 days, 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
From scratch.
So 3D. So now, Penny, in terms of like 3D, did you do some have you done a lot of heavy 3D modeling and work there, or was it's like, no, I just need shapes and I know how to kind of extrude them and make stuff happen, or?
Well, this right here that you're looking at is the Funhouse. We were given, and we can't show it because it's not our property, but we were shown the little foam miniature for when they were going to build that set for the end of the movie. And I just needed to get my head around the space. So I built like a rough version of this based on their pictures and just did some sort of photogrammetry, like by hand, you know, like, okay, here I'm going to cut out a shape that looks like the floor. And then I used that as a base to screen grab those shapes and then we would draw them. So all those floor pieces were based on my 3D model.
Wow.
And then like right now, this pushing in, like those hands, they look so freaking good. And I want to say that Amanda drew them, and they're
Nice.
just incredible. And they're just flats,
Just
right?
flat.
Like
they're just 2D.
Really?
layers. Yeah.
you can see earlier when it kind of goes sideways on
Yeah.
them.
Oh, I
you
actually I can see it on
kinda
the,
scrub through it.
Yeah.
the postcard, the Photoshop postcard look there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some stuff is really simple shapes. Some stuff is just, like literally a flat with the drawing and an alpha channel.
Right.
And, like those just happen to be like facing a certain direction, and then they rotate the opposite direction of the thing that they're on. Super easy.
So much of this was about tricks. It was about
Right.
about finding little workarounds to save labor, and I think in the end also contributed a lot to the look of things. When you have limitations, it makes you create interesting fixes.
PR quote right there. Everyone's listening. Limitations help you create. I love it. I'm going to mess it up. Yes, I love limitation. I do too. I've said this before on stream. It translates strangely out of context. But I used to have, when I was, so I went to Berklee College of Music, and I had a professor who used to say, this is again quite a few years ago, but it was the concept of pre-production, right? And limitation. And back when you didn't have endless tracks to record, you had 24 tracks or something like that maximum based on the tape formats of the day. And because of that, today it's like shooting photography, right? You shoot 450 frames like it's nothing because you're not confined to 24 or 36 on a roll of film. Well, today we can record 128 tracks. Back then it was 24. And he used to say, you have to pre-produce to reproduce. It sounds weird, but it's the idea that if you can think ahead, right, and leverage the limitation, you can make it work and actually deliver something that's really cool and unique. And gosh, I mean, it's so captivating kind of seeing this whole thing come together. And then, like you said, a lot of it is tricks because I didn't really catch the sort of 2D postcard nature of some of the images here. But now as I'm looking at this, I can definitely see, and it's freaking awesome. Kent Albin is asking, Penny, did you use UV unwrap for the cinema textures?
I mean, I didn't it was so simple. We would, just take whatever the shape is. Like, for instance, for drawing those little floor pieces that look like kidney beans,
Yes.
I used, I projected a picture of the set from the pre-production, and then, stuck that texture onto a floor plane. And then from overhead, just took a screen capture of the shape, brought that into Photoshop, brought the resolution up to whatever we needed, and then just drew on that. And then back in Cinema, we would just take whatever that resolution of that Photoshop file was, if it was like 5,000 by 3,000 or something, we would just make a 5:3 ratio plane and slap it on there as, just as a texture. There's no fancy UV tricks or anything. It's very simple.
Amazing. So our very own Tim Krakowski, what's up, Tim, on the After Effects team? He was asking, the camera push in this shot is awesome. I wonder if that was Penny and Amanda's creation or if it came from the cinematographer or other art direction.
We designed all the camera moves. So
Wow.
Penny came up with these moves based on this on the storyboards that we had.
We had real free reign in terms of how we animated the camera.
Yeah.
We had free reign to pretty much on all of it. It was great. Michael's a very, well, what do you think? I'd be like, all right, well, let me show you something.
Yeah.
That's great. All right.
Is that pretty common?
By experimenting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is that common for such like a high budget film? It seems like, because it's amazing, and obviously it's a testament to your skill and abilities. But like, is that super common to just roll with it? We'll see what you got.
I don't know. I feel like every time I've ever worked on a project, I mean, you get boards and you're trying to reproduce the idea, the feeling of the boards, if not the exact, look. And so, I want to say that if you go back to I don't know the time code, but for instance, who is it? The badge shot. I'm blanking on her name. Is that Rosie Perez?
Yeah,
Rosie Perez. Here.
Yeah, so Rosie Perez, like the board was, the badge was just giant and flat in the background. you know, it was her element that Michael wanted to show, and it was a silhouette of her and some extra framing elements, and the board looked great, and it was like, okay, that's great, but how do we show this for 3 seconds and show visual interest over 3 seconds, so it's not just a flat thing, and we're not just doing like a 2.5D push on it. Like, can we bring a little more to this? And I was like, okay, I have an idea. I'm going to project it onto a cyc, and then where the camera starts, it looks like it's the same place that the image is being projected from. So it feels flat, and then the camera moves and also changes its focal length, and you get that sort of, you know, that, what is that Spike Lee move? The push and open up your focal length.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot what they call that.
Yes.
But it's dramatic. It makes it feel like the person is even bigger than the space, you know, and it tricks the eye a little bit. And so we really, you know, some shots wanted just a little camera drift.
Yeah.
And some wanted more, like, so I wanted some shake to feel, it's all motivated, right?
Jason, if you go to around minute 6, so this is a card for Ella J. Basco. And we had, what you see at the end of the shot is what the storyboard was, but we needed to make it feel like it was living in a 3D space and had some life to it. And in this particular one, I decided to push, to like kind of reverse the space so that the colors we're seeing are not, they are what is happening behind another surface. So it feels like we're using negative space differently. So using Penny's idea of like putting objects closer and further away, these stars were kind of our particles for this shot. But you can create a lot of space by just pushing things out and leveraging the 3D camera in After Effects.
God, I should be watching it over here, but I'm getting lost just watching it on my bigger screen over here. So a couple of people have asked on YouTube, so what was the total production time for you kind of, I mean, obviously there's reviews and everything, I'm sure, in the middle, but what was the production time for kind of delivering the final of all this?
It's got to be around 2 weeks, right? Or 2 months. Yeah, 8 weeks about.
Yeah.
It was, you know, I mean, all right, we weren't on for the boards process.
Right.
Like we kind of came on, what is that, like beginning of October?
Yes.
When you moved to LA?
Yeah.
and I caught up with you?
I got there on the 16th and then we started on the 18th.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we worked for about 7 or 8 weeks. I was in LA for 7 weeks.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's like everything is in boxes, but you know the laptop is out. You're cranking out this kind of product. It's so amazing. So
it was
good.
A lot of fun to be. We were jumping between different machines, and sometimes I would be working on a texture for Penny and tossing it over to her, and it really felt. It felt very. It didn't feel like an enormous production, but it was such fun subject matter. Even though it was a big movie, it felt very. We had so much fun with it.
I would also want to add. Even though we were in the same room, like I could throw things at you if I wanted to. We were working off Dropbox. We had a remote workflow. So we could have made this title sequence today with all of this.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
That actually, that someone, Jason was asking that on Periscope. Right. Did you, and you just answered it, but right. Were you collaborating remotely or was it you were actually together? But that's interesting that's how you were actually kind of moving things around and sharing them anyway. Our guest Bob on Monday said the same thing. He does a series for USA Today, a video series called Just the Facts, and they produce these 1 to 3 minute stories on topical things every day. He's got a team of 4 to 6 people doing it, and they're using the new productions feature, which we just released on Tuesday, as well as team projects in Premiere, which works with After Effects. And so he has a motion graphics person, and he's got someone who's doing some of the design and the editing, of course. And he was saying he was actually quite prepared, much like the two of you are saying, for this kind of, you know, remote work from home situation, because they were already collaborating. Nothing really changed except they weren't doing it from the office, but collaborating. They were just doing it from their homes, collaborating, you know. Super, super cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got just a couple more minutes here. A couple of people have asked, and I was kind of curious too. Any particular artists or maybe animators that you kind of use as inspiration? I always love to hear this from fellow creatives. Either of you can answer it first, but obviously looking at something like this, you had a directive and you were going for a particular style. But if you had to say, Amanda, like, I was heavily influenced by this kind of style, or Penny, who might those people be?
Oh man,
I'll let you go first, Amanda. Okay,
no, I don't know.
Well, all right. So I'm really bad at keeping up with like motion graphic artists. Like, I don't really know that many people out there, like, and shops doing stuff. Like, I'll see it, but I don't catalog it.
Right.
I'm kind of like into the idea that inspiration can also come from outside of the field you're working in. And so
Sure.
I like when I'm doing camera moves, I like to be inspired by movies I've seen, or
Right.
by just feelings I've had, or experiences. But I would say that we were kind of, I don't want to speak for you, Amanda, and I'll let you answer after. I was inspired by Harley Quinn. I was inspired by what her take would be on, like, we have a whole like backstory of like, this is her sketchbook, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's funny. You mentioned how like the camera moves inspired by films, because one of the first things I remember when I saw this too, I don't know for what. Well, first of all, and maybe it is kind of partially Harley Quinn, and maybe it's because I'm also in that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood Margot Robbie mindset. But there was something about the camera moves and the animated, organic nature here that reminded me a lot of the the '60s Clint Eastwood westerns, where there were a lot of these pushes, and there's just like the organic text. If you remember some of those title sequences, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Not this exactly, but a lot of the movement kind of, it had that, there's something that's sort of like a psychedelic vibe, which again, I guess is also very Harley Quinn in a lot of ways. I love hearing you say that it's not directly responsible, but it's another type of influence just around you or from some other creative medium. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
I think like if it doesn't look like it was created in the program, like, I hate to say it, I love After Effects, but if it doesn't look like it was created in After Effects, then that maybe is telling a story beyond the software.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What about you, Amanda?
I think so. I agree with Penny that like definitely what influenced the look of this was thinking about Harley and what Harley. I mean, she was constantly in the film. She was constantly doodling on things. She has like new tattoos all the time, and so there's this feeling of the handmade textures that was really important that I thought about a lot while we were working on it. But in terms of things that inspire the rest of my work, there are a lot of illustrators who, like, just in terms of color use and composition, have really influenced me lately. And they're illustrators who are active now. So Chris Chow does beautiful watercolor work that I'm obsessed with. Okay. I love Samantha Mash's color choices.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I love what Rachel Suggs does with almost lithograph textures. So those are I have a tendency when I'm working on my own projects, and also when I'm between my own projects working on other things, I'm constantly grabbing things that that are visually interesting to me and just like storing them away. And it's like such a nice refresh when you are stuck on something to just go through the images you have collected and be like, oh, what is actually interesting and like visually fun to me. And I feel like that's a huge part of how my brain works and probably it comes from also being a librarian, but just like curating collections, curating collections of the visuals that are working for me emotionally and visually, and going back to the same films over and over again. I could watch Aliens like twice a week probably, and pull inspiration from that even when I'm not working in a genre.
I love it. Yeah, actually. So yeah, Giles Mitchell is talking about sort of considering the reaction to Into the Spider-Verse. It seems like this hand touch style is kind of really connecting with audiences in a way that no one had really, I mean, I'm sure people had done similar things, but there's something about this, especially right now, that just, it grabs people, right? In an era where you've got 3 to 8 seconds to really capture someone's attention before they click away, especially now that everybody's binging Hulu, Netflix, and everything else. Right. There's something about this organic style. Someone else, Ashi, is mentioning Dr. Seuss meets pop art, meets old-time lithography, meets cinematography. It is mesmerizing.
That's a great description and very flattering.
And Jim Courtney says, with a slight nod to Peter Max. I love it. Yeah, this is really cool stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, this work is incredible, and we are so grateful and so thankful to have had the two of you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So I want to remind everybody, of course, that they can catch the replays of the entire week of our video live stream series on Adobe Live, Creative Cloud YouTube, Facebook, and of course, Twitter Periscope. Penny, Amanda, I want to thank you both so much. Your work is incredible. It's inspirational. You've lit up the chat. I mean, once again, it's funny. I'm reading through this. There's just so much of it is just like, wow. People don't even have questions because you're just sort of blowing their minds. A lot of stuff about system configs, and I remind anyone who's recently tuning in now, go back to about the 20-minute mark, and Penny and Amanda were talking about the system configs. Nothing super special, right? I mean, yeah, some MacBook Pros, but also you got a couple of shout outs, Penny, for leveraging Windows, because people love to see us, hey, we work on both. So thank you. Thank you for sharing some Windows UI as well. But again, I really want to thank you both for taking the time and showcasing your art, your amazing creativity. And I know personally, first of all, you not only got me to re-watch the movie again, but to appreciate everything leading up to just what you had done so much more. And actually, and I don't mean that, I'm not saying this to just say, something about seeing your work in advance too made me like Harley and just elements of the movie more. It actually glued it together for me somehow. Kind of like what you're saying, like the sketchbook concept, it made it feel more like I was reading it out of a comic book, which kind of just lent to like there's something very special about it. So thank you both is what I'm trying to say. And we hope you'll come and visit us again sometime. And also can't wait to see what else you're going to come up with. I know, Penny, you're on Behance already. So, if you ever desire to come back, and Amanda as well, and stream with us, I know I'd love to have you, and we'd love to have you on Adobe Live. So everyone, again, thank you for tuning in this week. Thank you so much. Be safe out there. You can catch all the replays. We're still taking comments. Thank you to all of my amazing Adobe colleagues for helping out in the chats and for helping us put this together. And we truly, sincerely hope that we brought you something a little bit unique, a little bit more direct conversations with the people that inspire you, with the people that are making the stuff, and again, getting you out there and trying new things and just doing amazing things by being inspired by everything around you. So until next time, I am Jason Levine with Penny Niederlander and Amanda Gotera. Have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, and we will see you again next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.